for a second week in a row. Who's it going to be, Ron? You mind telling us so we can all get on with our lives, especially with a game that means really nothing straight ahead? That and much more next on the Locked On Commanders podcast. Come and join us.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome aboard. Good to have you with us on the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. We're your daily podcast featuring and covering the Washington Commanders, free and available on all platforms, YouTube, and the WUSA 9 Plus app on your Roku or Amazon Fire Stick. We thank you for making us your first listen and or view of the day. My co-host David Harrison is out on this particular edition. He'll return with a crossover Thursday edition, and then we will get back together again one final time before the regular season and season finale. He is on SI.com, FanNation, and Commander Country. Make sure you check out David doing an excellent job covering the Washington Commanders. I'm Chris Russell, one half of the Russell and Ned Hirsch Show on the Team 980, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to noon Eastern Time, live or anytime, free and always live and on demand on the Odyssey app. When we're not here or there, we're on Twitter. David is at DHarrison82. I'm at WrestleMania621. The podcast at LO Commanders put up a lot of information and tweets and links there, so always check that out. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise, then this game is definitely for you. Download the game. Just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. That's Locked On in all caps in the game. All right, so we open up with a couple of thoughts on what we all saw on Monday night, and it was awful, and we all know that, and just kudos to the network and Locked On Bengals and Locked On Bills and everybody that contributed in some way to the coverage of Damar Hamlin and the awful tragedy that we, again, all saw unfold before our eyes. As of Tuesday evening, as we record this, and eventually post it, he is said to be needing, according to family members and multiple media interviews and reports, less oxygen. But there is concern about, of course, lung damage and breathing and all of that. And we are not doctors, and we are not trying to pretend to be, nor are we necessarily reporters. We are simply gathering this information based on what is publicly out there from outlets like NFL Network and local Pittsburgh and Cincinnati television stations and reporters, so on and so forth. So please understand that this is still a very, very, very fluid situation. From our perspective, the Commanders, like all other NFL teams, have changed their Twitter picture logo to a picture of a jersey with Damar on it, the name Damar, of course, not his last name, Hamlin, and the number 3 on it. So Damar above the number 3. All NFL teams have done that as of Tuesday night. The Commanders have also apparently made a $5,000 donation to Damar Hamlin's toy drive, which has, of course, just exploded with the tragedy. And it's the only way people can feel like they can help. So please do. It's easy to find. We'll put up the link. We put up some information on it on at LO Commanders. And please contribute if you can, along with many, many, many other charitable endeavors. Instead of spending $5 on that latte, maybe you can contribute $5 to a charitable organization. The Commanders are in a situation where they're not involved in the game, but they are one of 32. And everybody is going to be honoring Damar Hamlin and hoping that he pulls through. And don't worry about the game. It's not going to be made up this week. Listen, I don't know when or if it's going to be made up. My sense is it won't be. But the NFL and football and gambling and all that is the least of anybody's concern. So I just want to start saying thoughts, prayers from our family to Damar Hamlin, to his Bills family, to his real family, to the NFL family with that. And now we move on to the rest of our show. I guess the big news item on Tuesday was Jonathan Allen telling my colleagues and friends, the sports junkies on 106.7 The Fan and the Odyssey app on Tuesday morning, that he only has a strained patella tendon. Now, I mean, he's not a doctor. I assume he was told that, but it looks like the Washington Commanders escaped serious injury here. Now, of course, Allen was knocked out in the second quarter of Sunday's demoralizing loss to the Cleveland Browns and did not return. And of course, when you see a situation like that, you always fear the worst. It looks like, again, caution looks like they survived a major disastrous injury on top of a terrible loss there. And of course, every injury pales in comparison to what is going on with Damar Hamlin. We all understand that, right? I don't think I need to say that, but just in case I do. The other question and the other issue that Commanders fans feel very passionately about, as I found out on Twitter and on my radio show, is who is going to start this Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, by the time you watch this, by the time you listen to this, you may already have heard the news because it'll be leaked out to Ian Rappaport or it'll be announced by Ron Rivera. But really, it'll be leaked out to Ian Rappaport, if we're being honest. So what you're going to probably hear is such and such as the starting quarterback. In my opinion, as we said on the last episode, it should be Sam Howell, the 5th-round rookie from North Carolina. David feels a little bit differently. And as you know, he's also championed Jake Fromm, who I can't rule out. Now, what maybe happens here is maybe we see Jake Fromm and Sam Howell. Who knows? In some order. Maybe we see Taylor Heineke. I can't imagine Carson Wentz is part of the equation for many reasons. Maybe we see Heineke knowing that he's a free agent at the end of the year and give him one last chance to show and shine and make himself some money probably elsewhere. But my friend Logan Paulsen, longtime NFL tight end, former Washington NFL tight end, great analyst, current analyst for the Commanders on television, for 106.7 and the Team 980 and Odyssey, which is, again, in full disclosure, where I work, host, along with Craig Hoffman, of the Take Command podcast, an excellent podcast. He said on the Take Command podcast, when asked about Sam Howell starting and playing, quote, "From what I've seen and what I've heard, Sam is not ready." Well, then, that's an interesting, spicy meatball that Logan just dropped on, and I don't know if I have the time to fully answer it, but I'll do my best. One, yes, it is possible that he is not ready to go. It is possible that Sam Howell played well in the preseason when they don't really game plan a whole lot, when teams don't game plan a whole lot, and still isn't ready in the back of the mind of coaches to handle every situation that they want him to handle. It is possible. There are a lot of elements to this. Is it a good look if he's not ready to go in week 17 when Brock Purdy's doing what Brock Purdy is doing and some other rookie quarterbacks, have had limited success? And it's, again, limited success. Brock Purdy is the guy that everybody cites. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. I would like Sam Howell, even if he's not ready, to play on the fly. what can happen? You lose a game. Guess what? You're better off losing the damn game. Stop acting like this is a game you should win. And what's the best that can happen? Sam Howell actually plays pretty well, and he plays a little backyard style football, which is what he kind of sort of did at North Carolina. And he makes some plays and he jazzes up the fan base, and the fan base goes, wow, we might have something here. Gives you a little something to look forward to besides a potential new owner in the offseason. Right now, there's nothing to look forward to. Sam Howell needs to play. Logan Paulsen talks to coaches all the time. He's in the building all the time. He watches practice. He watches tape. I can't tell Logan Paulsen that he's wrong. First of all, he's saying what he sees. Then he's saying what he's heard. He talks to coaches. Why wouldn't we buy that? Why wouldn't we believe that? Of course we should. I love Logan. Logan's one of the smartest dudes I've ever covered. Friend, he listens, watches this podcast. We've had him on several times. I would have him on more. I just don't want to drive him crazy. He's really smart. If he says he's not ready, then 100% of me believes Sam Howell's probably not ready. My point is, even if he's 90% ready or 95% ready or 85% ready, and I don't know how to quantify that, his whatever ready is better than the other alternatives. Maybe outside of David's choice and Jake Fromm. Maybe outside of that. I want to see Sam Howell because it's the only reason for optimism, the only reason for hope, the only reason I care about this game, if I'm being totally honest. And if he does it against the Dallas Cowboys, woohoo, ruin their season a little bit, I guess. Take away a home playoff game if the Commanders can win. That's the only positive that I can think of. More on that coming up throughout the week, and we will again find out shortly, we think, what the plan is. We think. We don't know. We think at quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Coming up right here, we will get you a schedule of opponents for next year, and as well, Ian Rappaport, we mentioned him earlier, got a little abuse from a hopefully future Hall of Famer. We'll explain what we mean by that next on the Locked On Commanders podcast. But first, guys, this episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. That's right, Ultimate Football GM. They are a really cool new sponsor of the show and of today's episode, and many of our episodes over the last couple of weeks. The mobile game, Ultimate Football GM, can be yours with a simple touch of a couple of buttons on your phone, computer, what have you. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL and managing your own football franchise? Well, you can now. You can hire coordinators. You can fire coordinators. You can make draft picks. You can make free agent signings. All of this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free, playable offline, play on the go, as you want to and when you want to, and you can build your dynasty. Locked On Commanders listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in all caps. Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On, again, in all caps. Make sure you check it out today. Download the game at ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, back here on the Locked On Commanders podcast. Good to have you with us. Once again, I'm Chris Russell. Thanks for making us your first listen and watch of the day. Now subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions every Friday. And Monday, local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes. Locked On NFL, it's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. So, as you probably have already seen, heard, know, Ron Rivera did not know the playoff scenario of elimination of Doomsday on Sunday. We've covered that in the first two episodes of the week. What you may not have known, and we made, I think, veiled reference to it, was Ian Rappaport on, I believe it was Monday morning, maybe it was Sunday night, tweeted this out, quote, with the video, when everybody was basically spreading it like wildfire and making it a big deal. Not sure what the issue is. Only thing that matters is winning. Pretty safe to assume Ron Rivera was singularly focused on that rather than what would happen if they lost. That was Ian Rappaport's defense of Ron Rivera. Now, a lot of us, myself included, believe that Ron Rivera and Ian Rappaport have a very, very, very close and open relationship in terms of helping each other out. That's something we shouldn't hide from. That's just the bottom line truth. So, with this, a future Hall of Famer and my colleague over at Odyssey DC and 1067 The Fan and the Team 980, Brian Mitchell, 1992 Super Bowl champion or 91 season, you know the deal. Brian Mitchell, who should be in the Hall of Fame one day. Why he doesn't get more credit, I don't know. But we'll keep stumping for him because it's the only right thing to do. He pointed out on Twitter, at BMitchLive NBCS, but they had already lost. Stop being a damn puppet for these coaches. At Grant H. Paulson, who is my other colleague, who asked the question to Ron Rivera, wasn't wrong to ask a question that everyone except you and Ron thought was a bad question. So it's a damn issue. So B. Mitch deserves a lot of kudos and credit because I jumped on this because I hadn't seen Rappaport's thing until after B. Mitch said something. And I said, I agreed. Completely fair question and huge that the leader of the organization didn't know. That simple. Now, listen, some people are calling Ron stupid. I don't think that's right. Ron has to know, and Ron has to know. If he didn't know prior to the game, he sure as heck had to know after the game before meeting the media, period. Somebody's got to get that information to him. Or Ron's got to figure it out because he knows he's going to be asked something about possibly being playoff eliminated or needing a lot of wacky scenarios to work out. And Ron didn't do it. So kudos to B. Mitch. Kudos to Grant. And listen, I don't play a lot of the who leaked who, but I mean, it's pretty obvious. And it's frustrating to a lot of us that cover the team on a daily basis, closely at the facility, even not at the facility. It's frustrating. I'll just say that. So if they don't like that and that accusation and that criticism, too bad. Too bad. Meanwhile, speaking of criticisms, Reggie Ragland, Cleveland Browns linebacker, former second rounder and Alabama linebacker, he said that Washington Commanders players that he knew told him that they wanted Taylor Heinicke instead of Carson Wentz, and that Wentz has an elongated delivery. They studied that. They knew they had more time to get. All of that is true. Here's one thing I will just add. If Washington players think that Taylor Heinicke is a good quarterback and consistent, that's a problem because their evaluation is wrong. He is not consistent. He is a good quarterback at times, but not probably 50, and I would say up to 70% of the time. He is a mediocre, average, middling quarterback with highs and lows. That's what he is. And I think the league knows that over 24 starts. That's what he is. I'm sorry. If the Commanders players think that they'd rather play for Taylor Heinicke than Carson Wentz, that's a different story. If they think Taylor Heinicke should be playing because Taylor Heinicke is a better quarterback than Wentz, a legitimate argument can be made for that. He is certainly not more talented than Wentz. He certainly does not have the physical attributes that Wentz has, not only arm strength, but height, experience, so on and so forth. But if they like playing for Heinicke better than Wentz, fine. That's understandable. That showed for the most part. But they're not coaches. They're not watching the tape as in-depthly, if that's a word, as coaches, scouts, defensive coordinators like DeMeco Ryans, like the Cleveland Browns are. They don't see the shortcomings. Now, again, Carson Wentz got plenty of shortcomings, and that's why his tenure is probably not going to last more than a year and 7 games. But still, Taylor Heinicke cannot and should not be considered a good or better than good quarterback because he's not. You want to play for him? Fine. You want to play for him? Fine. But that's the only part of that makes sense. And if they were talking to Reggie Ragland and then he went on the record, and you could start to wonder, was it Cam Sims? Was it Daron Payne? Was it Jonathan Allen? Who knows? Maybe it was others because you don't have to play at Alabama to know Reggie Ragland and to say something. I don't know. But the bottom line is somebody said something unless Reggie Ragland's making it up. And again, it's kind of a bad look if they all think that Taylor Heineke is a good or very good quarterback because he's not. And winning games, 5-3-1, does not say that you are a good quarterback. It does not say that. It indicates that. It does not say that, and it does not spell it out. All right, so I wanted to get through that. The other thing, real quickly, that we wanted to touch on here is the Commanders' 2023 schedule and opponents. Of course, they will play the NFC East home and away, as we know. They will play at the New England Patriots and at the New York Jets at MetLife Stadium. So 2 trips to MetLife Stadium in 2023. One for the Jets, one for the Giants. They will play home for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills and Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins. They will be at Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams and at the Seahawks. So 2 West Coast road trips. They will be home for the Arizona Cardinals and home for Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers. They will also be home against the Bears. They will be at the NFC South fourth place team, which could be either the Panthers, the Falcons, or the Saints. That'll be determined after this upcoming week at one of those 3 teams. And they will be at the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson. So there you have that. When we return right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast, we'll wrap things up. Yes, we will indeed. We're trying to squeeze in as much as we can. We can only squeeze in so much, but Major Tuddy made it not even one full day on the job before a potential problem is arising. We'll tell you the details on that next. But first, this episode, guys, is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. That's right, LinkedIn Jobs. We tell you about them all the time. As a small business owner or a hiring manager, even in a big company, success in 2023 all depends on the team members that you surround yourself with, right? You got to have good, strong teammates, good character, hard work, all of that. That's why you want to check out LinkedIn Jobs. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to find, attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond the resume data that everyone uses, and they tap into the best candidates because they use simple screening questions. They get you the right people, the right character, the right backbone, if you will. And it's very simple because LinkedIn Jobs has you covered in the competitive recruitment market. You want the best. Now you can get the best with LinkedIn Jobs. So here's what you're going to do. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find, again, the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, wrap it up on the Locked On Commanders podcast. One roster move that really isn't a roster move per se anymore, but former Washington Commanders defensive line, a guy that I talked about a lot, guy that I predicted would be on the opening day roster. He was, but never really was able to generate and make a big impact with John Ridgeway playing a big role and others. Daniel Wise, who was released from the Commanders roster last week, according to Ben Standig of The Athletic and Odyssey DC, signing with the Kansas City Chiefs practice squad, according to a source. He played in 17 games, 2 starts over 2 seasons with Washington. So certainly wish Daniel Wise the best. Also, last week, we told you about O-Line Entertainment, LLC, which was formed by original members of the Hogs, including John Riggins, Joe Jacoby, Rick Doc Walker, my colleague, Fred Dean, Mark May, and that they had filed a lawsuit against the Commanders organization because of an upcoming trademark protection for the term hogs? Well, I guess they had kind of mentioned and threatened this late in the week that if the Commanders named their team nickname Hogs, obviously that would be one step. But then when they introduced Major Tuddy at halftime out of the locker room tunnel, and Major Tuddy obviously is, well, he's a hog. He's a hog. And they expect to market and use Major Tuddy as a marketing and merchandise symbol. And even, I guess, if it doesn't have the word hogs on it, because Major Tuddy is a representative of the Hogs, and Major Tuddy is a representative of the team's mascot, which is and are the Hogs, that they might throw Major Tuddy into the lawsuit. They are expected to, and perhaps Major Tuddy could be a symbol of more, according to their lawyer, forced trademark infringement litigation, end quote. Trademark infringement litigation. It's not a big deal to me, guys. I don't really care, if I'm being totally honest with you, about Dan Snyder's money. This hopefully will be something that can get sorted out. Maybe the new owners will pay some money to just get rid of the problem and to give the Hogs whatever money they're asking for. I don't know. This is not a big deal to me. It's a much bigger deal that the Commanders are trying to win a game that means absolutely nothing and might not start Sam Howell. We will see. All right, that's going to do it for this particular edition of the Locked On Commanders podcast. Again, David will be back with a crossover Thursday edition with the guys from Locked On Cowboys. They are playing for a lot. The Commanders are not playing for anything except pride. We want to thank you for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen and or your first watch of the day. Again, come back for that next episode. And then David and I will get together before the week is out for one final regular season episode. In the meantime, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports. Go beyond the scoreboard, beyond the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. It's Locked On Sports Today. Available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. You want to hop in? It's 301-615-3577. That's 301-615-3577. Or Locked On Washington Commanders at gmail.com. Or DM us at LO Commanders, at LO Commanders. And again, David is at D Harrison 82. I am at Russellmania 621. All right, that's going to do it for us, for David Harrison. Again, SI.com, FanNation, Commander Country. Check out David there. He's doing fine work. I'm Chris Russell, one half of the Russell and Medhurst Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app. We'll be back right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast.